The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Jasmine. I hope all of you can hear me clearly and can also see my share screen. Yeah, today I'm going to share something about overconfidence, especially in the context of financial decision making. So before that, I think I already uploaded some links, some news articles. If you have not read them yet, maybe I can quickly go through them with you. So I'll just get some paragraphs from the news articles from the links, and also a few more. Okay, so first of all, there's recently a very interesting piece on CNBC on memory, overconfidence, and investment. So basically, this is also a recent study, a very nice study published on PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science of the United States. So this study highlights the importance of overconfidence in investment decisions in individual investors' investment decisions. Okay, so basically, I just highlighted the key paragraphs of this article. So it started by saying that overconfidence as an investor or trader is really, really dangerous because you can get yourself a lot of trouble, said FERNBACH, who is the writer of the article. Okay, and also he mentioned that in the whole process, memory might be very important and might play a very important role, because many of the times we make our investment decisions based on our information. And many of the times it also involves the recall of past memory, especially one's own past memory investment performance. And so what is highlighted in this study in PNAS was that when you're recalling your past, your brains are probably doing some kind of a decoration of your past investment performance on the brighter side. So basically, he said, okay, if I ask you, how well did you past investment do? You are probably more likely to remember what has been better than it actually was, okay? And he really collected scientific evidence on that. So later on, I'm going to show you more details, but now I'm just reading what is said in the news, okay? Basically, yeah. It says that then it supports the belief that you're good at investing or trading despite evidence to the contrary. Okay, I think, and also in the same article, they say that in generally people tend to remember good times and forget bad times, right? And if there is such a systemic distortion of memory, that will lead to higher level or higher tendency of overconfidence. And what will overconfidence do if you, let's say, have it when you make your investment decisions? Okay, so the same article said, when it comes to investing in particular, too much confidence is not necessarily a good thing. So if you don't have an accurate view of the data, then you're going to have an inflated sense of your own capabilities, and that in general will lead to higher trading frequency. So, and also higher trading frequency from empirical research in finance is always associated with larger payment to transaction cost, and in general, lower investment return after fees, lower net returns of investment. Okay, that's something they want to highlight in this. And also, I think for some of you, if you have investment experience, you may also heard the terminology called disposition effect. Disposition effect means that in general, you tend to, let's say, hold the losers and sell the winners. Namely, you sell the stocks that's going to earn you returns too quickly and hold the stocks that is actually leading a loss on you for too long. And you trade too frequently or too often, that also increase the chance for you to be subject to disposition effect. Okay, all right. And also a related study. Okay, I think I shared the link in New York Times, but unfortunately, I think it's a paid link. So I just replace it by a kind of a free news on a similar topic from Forbes. Okay, so and also because of overconfidence, actually recently, many financial planners and financial advisors would give kind of the remark that they say, even though traditionally many people would think that investment is kind of a more often a male thing or yeah, done mainly by men, but actually the gender difference in overconfidence may make it more plausible to have women to be an investor, to make the investment decision. Okay, so this piece of Forbes just kind of highlight this idea. It basically said that in general, psychological studies or evidence always show that in general, male tend to be more overconfident than female. So women are less subject to overconfidence than men. In general, just like the second paragraph says that, right? So, well, in general, right? In general, women are apt to stay calmer than men in down markets, right? It protects them from locking in their losses when the market takes a momentary tumble. And what's more, in general, because men are overconfident, men trade 45% more than women do, right? That's a clear suggestion that men are more confident investors, but in general, by trading too often, and without enough research, that just leads to lower return by men than women, especially due to overconfidence. Okay, that's the second piece. Okay. And then there is a third one. I think I also shared the link in the flyer, right? So overconfidence is not only relevant for individual investment decisions. Actually, it also matters for corporate decision-making of corporate investment. Okay, just like recently, right? Recently, there was a lot of discussion about the overconfidence of the senior managers or the CEOs of a company, right? Just like this paragraph from Forbes said, it's a fair bet that many people would place a lot of the blame for the collapse of the investment bank Lehman Brothers and the subsequent financial crisis on the overconfidence of executives. Many people say that, well, probably the overconfidence of the large investment banks and financial firms is the root of taking too much risk and the following financial crisis. And also in corporate finance or corporate decisions, many people also say that overconfident CEOs tend to make too ambitious mergers and acquisition decisions. They tend to buy too much. They tend to make too big deals of acquiring another firm, even though that might not necessarily do the shareholders good, right? And recently still, right? There was also, the ongoing discussion about Elon Musk, about like his unconventional behavior as a chief executive officer, right? So basically, also a lot of debate about his kind of, I think, proposed purchase of Twitter. At the beginning, sounds a lot of change, but now people were also discussing about, well, it seemed that actually Tesla stocks was not doing quite good after the announcement of this acquisition decision, and actually more recently, Twitter stock also gets some problems. So, I mean, of course, not all people viewed it like this, but at least some people would say that, well, yeah, this could be another place where overconfidence could play a role. Okay, so basically, also quite a lot of discussion in financial news about overconfident CEO and the potential risks of them being overconfident. Okay, and then there was just this very nice piece in BARBER written by Nobel Prize winner in economics, Richard Thaler from University of Chicago. Okay, so when the kind of interviewer asked him, which elements of behavioral economics do you find particularly relevant now? I think it's still back to the year, I think 2016 probably. That was the time the stock market was doing quite okay. And this is what Richard Thaler basically said. He said, let me first say that it's not that people have gotten many smarter over the years. So I don't think there's any problem we were studying earlier on that is no longer relevant. But because people have figured out how to stop making their mistakes, I think the biggest mistake people make, and one that we are very much seeing over the past 6 months or so, is overconfidence. So basically, Nobel Prize winner Richard Thaler thinks that overconfidence by now still seems to be the biggest and the most relevant behavioral bias that could kind of harm the quality of our decision in daily life and also in the financial market. Okay, and so basically, actually here he also provided a description of overconfidence, right? He said most people think they are in the top decile, right? Top 10%, and yeah, that's so when they are rating their own sense of humor, that's because they know what's funny, but of course this cannot be a scientific truth, right? So you cannot have everyone in the top 10%, and of course not everyone can be the top. So this is kind of one way of illustrating what overconfidence is. Okay, all right. Yeah, so these are some just like yeah. In case you haven't read the link, the content in the links, that's some most important paragraphs from the news pieces. And in the following, I think 10 minutes, what I would propose is that maybe you can just enter the breakout room. I have some discussion questions here. You can first try to discuss about the answers for these questions. I will also try to join the discussion, join you in the breakout rooms. And after the 10 minutes, we can just move back to the main room. And then I do some kind of debriefing, do some kind of, I'll guide you through the concepts of overconfidence and also like its impact in financial context. Yeah. So these are the questions here. These are basically the questions.
Yep, I will also send the questions within the breakout rooms, but let me now open.
Okay.
Hi.
We're back. Yeah.
Hi. We had a very interesting discussion in our breakout room.
Oh, that's great. That's great. We had some, but not so much. But so are there any questions I can address?
Yes, there is actually. Maybe I'll give summary and then we could then ask, yeah. Kam Chiong asked a very interesting question because you said overconfident, right? Or under, how do you actually measure and how do you quantify that?
Oh, how to measure overconfidence? Yeah, I'm going to go to details actually just in the next slide. So,
okay.
Basically, there are 3 ways of defining overconfidence, and a very simple way would simply be asking somebody's own estimate or forecast of his or her performance, and then compare it with the actual performance. Yeah, so basically the difference, especially the inflated part, the positive deviation, would be very common used measure of overconfidence. But of course, at the same time, there are other definitions of overconfidence and other ways of measuring overconfidence. Yeah.
I hope that helps answer the question you had.
Any other questions from the other room? No? Okay, so then maybe I'll just proceed or with my presentation, and if the audience have more questions, I'm always happy to give more detailed information at the end. Okay, so here are some more here are the things I want to cover in today's presentation. So yeah, I'm going to show you the definition of overconfidence, especially how it's defined in behavioral finance. And then about its possible impacts and what are the consequences of overconfidence. And finally, also some just discussion about is overconfidence really good or bad? And if that is bad, how we can avoid it. And if that's good, how we can use it, and so on. All right. So first of all, in behavioral finance or psychology in general, we define overconfidence in the following 3 ways. So people, first of all, if we just say in one sentence, overconfidence bias is a tendency for people to be more confident than their own ability or probability of success than it actually is. Okay, and it represents itself in kind of 3 ways. So first is called overestimate. Overestimate is more like overconfidence in the absolute term. Overestimate is very simple. It just means overconfidence in the absolute term. So for example, if let's say before an exam, you think that you can get an A+, right? But it turns out that your actual performance is B+. Right? So then we say you overestimate your ability, or you estimate your probability of success, or so on. Or maybe in terms of stock market, right? In stock market, you said that, well, I'm going to beat the market, or I'm going to have an annualized return of 10%. But if that turns out to be, let's say, 4%, then it's also clearly an example of overestimate. You overestimated your performance by 6%. Okay. And second is called over-precision. Over-precision is a little bit more technical. Over-precision means that you overestimate the accuracy of your forecast. So if you think about it, it's just like, okay, let's say, again, you just make a forecast of, so what is, let's say, what is the return of your portfolio in the next year? You say, well, and I ask you, please give me maybe let's say 90% confidence interval, which means that 9 out of 10 times your confidence interval should cover the realized return of yours, right? So and actually in real life, when you're making your prediction, so actually you should allow for some variation or fluctuation. So over precision here in general just means that you underestimate the fluctuation and overestimate the accuracy. So so let's say if I ask you, so what is your expected return of your portfolio in the next year? You will say, well, 5% plus minus 1%, which means that you think 90% of the times the return of your portfolio should be between 4 to 6%. But let's say, right, if you make the prediction 10 times, but out of the 10 times, the returns are either 3 or 2 or 8%, but never between 4 to 6%. That's over precision. So this is kind of overconfidence about the certainty of the outcome, overestimation of the certainty of the outcome. It's not really like you underestimate your performance, but it's just like you underestimate how certain you can get the performance. You overestimate how certain you can get a performance, and you underestimate the disturbance of the performance. So that's called over-precision. And I'm also going to say a little bit more about over-precision in financial decision-making later. Okay, and the last one is called over-placement. Over-placement. Over-placement is the term of is the type of overconfidence where people kind of overestimate their relative performance or overestimate their ranks. It's an overestimation in ranks or relative performance. This is more like, right, like the example below. So if I ask you, so let's say, how would you rank your sense of humor, just like Richard Thaler's story, right? So many people will say that I'm top 10% humorous people in the world. But then it turns out that, well, most people will say so. And then obviously some people are overestimating their rankings. So maybe you are just at the middle, but you think that you're top 5%, or maybe you are even below the average, but you think that you're top 30% or something. So this is overplacement. Okay. So the study of overconfidence in psychology started very, very early, and back to 1980s, there are already many famous studies. The most famous one is something like this study in psychology by Swanson, 1981. And they say that, well, if you're just asking American people, right, so how do you rank your driving skill? How do you rank your driving skill? You will see that 93% of American people will think that their driving skill is above the average, is above the median. So how can 90% of people can be above 50 percentile, right? So that clearly shows that people overestimate their ability, their overconfidence. Okay. And then I'm basically going to talk in more details about how overconfidence represents itself in different decision contexts and their potential impacts. Okay, so first thing is I want to talk a little bit about overconfidence in individual decisions. Okay, so this is back to the example in the newspaper. I'm going to talk more details. Overconfidence in individual investment decision. In general, overconfident traders tend to trade too much. That leads to high transaction costs. From statistical point of view, if you trade more, you do not necessarily earn more, but you definitely pay more transaction cost. And especially from individual traders trading record. So these are the numbers in the US and in China. Yeah, I'm not sure about the Singapore data. I guess probably would be something maybe in the middle, or I don't know. So they say for a typical or average American individual investor, the turnover rate is 100%. Is 100%. So basically, what does it mean? It just means that for every year, so a typical average American investor will just kind of completely kind of sell all the assets in the portfolio and rebuy something new. Okay, so this 100%. Okay, it's a very high volume, a turnover rate. It's like, yeah, you never hold something to the end, even within the same year, but in the same year, you already reshuffle your cards once. And for the Chinese market, it's even worse, it's even bigger. It's 400. In China, it's on average, it's 400%. 400% turnover rate means that you kind of also, like, if you think buy and sell your stocks is like reshuffle your cards, you reshuffle your cards 4 times. From the beginning to the end of the year, you already reshuffle your cards 4 times. You completely replace it. Okay, and yeah, and if you think about it, So the main thing, the main reason for the high trading frequency or the high turnover rate in US and China is mainly just like this is a very nice survey data by some researchers in Tsinghua University, and also I think by the Fed survey. So they say that in general, if you look at the actual performance of individual investors in both in the US and in China, only 5 to 10% individual or retail investors have the ability to beat the market, for a longer period of time. And actually, 30 to 40% of individual investors just consistently underperform the market. So in this case, the better decision for them is simply not to do investment themselves, but to buy, let's say, an index fund or so on. Okay, but if you look at the survey data, asking them, so do you think you can beat the market? You will see that more than half of them think that they can. So even though only 10% of them actually can, but more than half of them think that they can. Okay. And also, this is a very famous study in behavioral finance, BARBER and ODEAN, 2001. I think they have the title also, because it also concerns gender difference. It has a very interesting title called something like "Boys Will Be Boys." Okay, so they say they really collect the data from 35,000 American households. Okay, and in general, they find that all traders tend to, on average, all traders tend to be overconfident, but male investors are much more overconfident than female investors. So in general, if you ask them, so by how much you can earn extra return on top of the market return, male investors think that they can earn 2.8% more, and the female investors think that they can make 2.1% more. So both groups think that they can earn more than the market portfolio, but male are more overconfident than female. Okay, and indeed, due to the overconfidence, both male and female trade too much. But obviously, male incur larger loss due to overtrading compared to female investors. On average, the loss due to excess trading is 2.65% for male investors and 1.72% for female investors. If you think about it, yeah, it's a very, very large number. It's a very large number. Okay, that's for individual investors. And then, so this is actually the more detailed experimental design result of the PNAS study, I showed at the beginning. Okay, recently people also find that overconfidence has a lot of things to do with what we call motivated belief or distorted memory. Okay, motivated belief is a very, very important recent literature in behavioral economics. So in general, if you want to explain it in one sentence, motivated belief is a tendency for people to believe what they want to believe. Okay, motivated belief just means that people tend to believe what they want to believe. For example, when recalling past information, right, people are more likely to recall their success than recalling failure, because by recalling more success, that helps them to maintain a more positive self-image and make them happier. Okay, all right. But that also means their recall of information is inaccurate, right? So they tend to overestimate their past success, and that also leads to their tendency to be overconfident about their future performance. Okay. And so these are something like the more details of the PNAS paper, Waters and FERNBACH. Okay, so to assess motivated belief, research participants are asked their 2 recent stock trading experience and their returns. Just asking them, tell us, let's say, so because the researchers have approached these investors, they have their account level information, they know how well they did in the past, but still they ask the participants first, tell us like 2 recent experience about your stock trading, right? To assess overconfidence, the participants are asked to estimate their ability to overperform the market index in the next 12 months. And as we all know, on average, people actually cannot beat the market, but usually they think they can. And the difference between the two is a measure of overconfidence. Okay. And yeah, so according to the experimental result, first of all, there's clear evidence that people have motivated beliefs. Their recalled returns of their trades are usually 8% higher than the actual return. So for example, if the researchers just ask the subject, so what do you think is your performance of the most recent trading experience? Maybe the participant will answer like, okay, I traded, maybe I traded Apple stock, right? I traded Apple. I traded, let's say, 100 shares, and then my return was 12%. But then the actual data shows that when he said he thought that was 12%, it was actually only 4%, and so on. So on average, people have this very, very strong tendency to have motivated beliefs. They recall wrongly. They remember success better than they remember failure. And when they recall the same thing, they also tend to inflate their degree of success. Okay. And also on average, subjects predict their return will beat the market index by 13%, which is actually incredible, right? Which is actually incredible. We know that this is not possible with real data, but people still believe so. And the authors also find there is a very strong correlation between motivated belief and overconfidence. Those who have larger likelihood of overestimating their past performance also tend to overestimate their future performance, right? So this is something we clearly know. And also in relation of why overconfidence is bad and how we can address or how we can reduce its negative impact. So here is what the authors show, right? Here is what the authors show. Okay. So the authors say that, well, so then what we can do, if people become overconfident because they cannot remember things well, does it help if we just tell them their actual performance in the past? And the results show that yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So if after the subjects, so after you ask the subjects how well they did in the past, if they tell you this inflated number, you tell them, but look, here is your actual return in the past. And then if you watch them in the following month, you will see that they become more rational. They become calmer. So, so one very nice take-home message from this study is just like this: do check your past records. And having the right information helps to alleviate the impact of overconfidence. Okay, so that's the individual decisions. Okay, and then the overconfidence among financial professionals. So this is a nice study done by, I think, researchers from Duke University. I think they have a very nice survey. And the main research question of the survey is what they call miscalibration or miscalibrated forecast by CFOs. So this might be also relevant, especially you work as a financial officer in your firm in the future. Okay. So so in general, in many companies, a very important job for the CFOs or the financial officers is to make forecasts of their firm's profitability or the stock market in the next, let's say, year or next few months, right? But in the US, if you look at really like the survey data of these professionals, so let's say usually they ask them like the 80% confidence interval of stock returns of these CFOs, you will see that they are overconfident about the accuracy of the forecast. So let's say if they are not overconfident, right? If they are not overconfident, again, as I said before, their 80% confidence interval should include the right realized stock market return for 80% of the times. But if you look at the real data, so first, there's a good thing is that on average, CFOs in the market can make unbiased estimation of the return of the S&P 500 index. So on average, they don't have forecasting mistakes. That's a good thing. But on the other hand, they just overestimate the accuracy of the forecast, or they underestimate the disturbance. So the 80% confidence interval of these financial forecasters only contain the true realized return for 36% of the times. So they miss for more than 60% of the times. So this is something, right? If you are CFO in the future, we are making your predictions, you need to take caution not to make too narrow prediction bands. And also, if you see this kind of confidence interval or prediction bands by other forecasters, you shouldn't take it literally. Maybe you should enlarge it a little bit to make sure that you don't miss the actual realization. Okay, I think that's for the over precision for the financial forecasters. And finally, overconfidence and corporate investment decision making. Overconfidence and corporate investment decision making. So that many concerns like the decision for CEO for CEO. Okay, so in the empirical literature, there are two ways for measuring CEO overconfidence. So first one is if they postpone exercising the stock option if that's already in the money. So we know that many of the time CEOs are awarded stock options, and let's say if they exercise their stock options, basically, especially if they exercise the right to, let's say, buy the stocks at a low price or sell it at a reasonably high price, they get cash, they get money. But some of the time, the CEO actually postpone or deliberately do not exercise their stock options. And one of the possible reasons they don't do so is just like, so suppose they do not exercise the option to sell it at a given price, that could be because they think that the stock price of their own company can go up even further in the future or faster in the future. And that's a kind of overconfidence. So they already get the money, but they don't realize it because they think that they can, by not exercising the option, they can even make more. Okay, they are very confident about their firm. And second is nowadays empirical finance study very often use media data, press-based measure of CEO overconfidence. So they use the number of times the CEO appear in the media and the frequency of the appearance of words related to charm, confidence, optimism in the report, in the article. Okay. And so what do they find? What do they find about overconfident CEOs? Are overconfident CEOs better CEOs or worse CEOs? So I'm going to show you a number of studies. Okay, you will see that to my knowledge, many show overconfident CEOs tend to be bad, and there are a few reasons, a number of reasons you should avoid them. But on the other hand, there are also some studies who argue that overconfident CEOs can be good, which you might also consider. Okay, so first thing is that okay. So if you look at the star CEOs, not stat CEOs, star CEOs, who won the Business Week CEO of the Year reward. Okay, then what are you going to see? So in general, the stock of the firms on average underperform 15 to 26% compared to other firms in the following years. And if they acquire another firm, in general, in the 3-day announcement window of the takeover, the return for their own company is also negative, which is kind of, or unfortunately, also the case for the potential Tesla's or Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. Okay, and why that's so? So from behavior economics point of view or behavioral finance point of view, some people will say that that's an example of a winner's curse. So in general, so if let's say the valuation of a good is normally distributed, usually the winner of the auction or competition will be those bidders whose signal is considerably, substantially above the fair value of the target, and that also is particularly more likely to be true for the overconfident people, for the overconfident persons. So that's the one thing. So many people argue, from corporate finance literature, many people argue that overconfident CEOs tend to acquire other firms in a too aggressive way, and that usually harm their firm's stock performance. Okay. And second, some people say that overconfident CEOs also tend to be less socially responsible. Okay. CEO confidence is in general negatively correlated with corporate CSR, corporate social responsibility. And the effect is stronger in institutional aspects such as community and workforce diversity, right, of the firm, and less important for technical aspects of CSR. All right. And then for dividend policy, this is something like if you are an investor, you want to buy a company's share in order to just receive the dividend gains. Okay, so then this study tells you that, well, so then overconfident CEO might be a bad thing for you. Because from statistical point of view, on average, overconfidence in CEOs tend to view external financing as costly, and hence they want to reserve more cash within their firm, and very often they achieve this goal by lowering the current dividend payoff. So they are more reluctant to pay dividend to the shareholders. So if you want to buy the stocks for the sake of receiving dividend, overconfident CEOs is not a good news for you. And then how about overconfident bank owners, bankers? There are also studies about, okay, so the loan safety and overconfidence. So there is a GFE paper find that banks with overconfident CEOs are more likely to weaken lending standard and increase the leverage than other banks in advance of financial crisis. They generally experienced more increases in loan defaults, greater drops in operating and stock return performance, greater increase in expected default probability, and high likelihood of CEO turnover than other banks. So overconfident CEO is also makes banks more risky, At the same time, some studies also show that overconfident CEOs tend to be associated with larger stock price crash risk. So So if you look at the extremely negative returns, the likelihood of extremely negative returns, so let's say it falls 3.2 standard deviation below the mean weekly returns, so the extremely negative returns, overconfident managers tend to have more likelihood of stock crash, because overconfident managers tend to overestimate the return of their projects and get projects with a negative NPV or bad NPV. Okay, so many bad things about overconfident CEO. But at the same time, I also find two studies who show like, well, overconfident CEO might not always be bad. Okay, so first thing is that we know overconfident CEOs tend to take more risks. And if you want to make innovation, sometimes it's inevitable that you need to take risks. So there are also some nice study, a nice study done by Hirschlefer. Showing that overconfident CEOs are more likely to invest in innovation, and the investment in general also leads to more patents and citations. And also, there is a very nice recent study published in Journal of Financial Studies. Actually, I think the first 2 or 3 authors are our colleagues from SMU and NTU. So they find that overconfident CEOs might have better leadership in the sense that they tend to develop better relationship with the employees and the stakeholders, for example, the suppliers. So in general, because overconfident CEOs put more of their own money in the company, because they are overconfident, so they put more stake in their own company. So that's a kind of a commitment. And with this kind of commitment, it's also easier for them to kind of convince the partners to be more loyal to their company. So this study shows that overconfident CEOs tend to be associated with lower employee turnover. And also they tend to allocate greater fraction of assets in the retirement plans for their employees, which is very good. And they also tend to have more stable relationship with the key suppliers on average. So yeah, for this part, overconfident CEOs might be good as employers or business partners. Okay, so I think these are so much I want to share about the knowledge about overconfidence especially from the behavioral finance literature. So now I think I can just stop to receive more questions and yeah, see if there are any discussion questions from the audience. So I think there is a question shared by Prof. Liang asking, Sally from breakout room asks, what is the difference between overconfidence and overoptimism? Okay, so I think for this question, we can just go back to the definition of overconfidence, right? So I think overconfidence is similar to the first type of overconfidence, which is called overestimate. Namely, in absolute terms, you are overconfident about your ability or performance. But to some extent, overconfidence is broader than overoptimism, because overprecision and overplacement is kind of something that's different from overoptimism. Any other questions?
Hi, Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I was just watching a documentary about the coach for Serena Williams. So who's a tennis player. And at one stage, she wasn't that keen to move to the front of the net because she felt that she's not going to get the tennis ball. So what the coach instead did was that during the break, tell her that, oh, statistically, if you go to the net, 80% of the times you actually get the ball. And then Serena Williams then says, oh, but I thought I suck. I thought I was really lousy. And so the message is that a good lie can then become the truth. It is good. A good lie can then become the truth.
Yes.
So
Sometimes.
then Serena Williams began to believe that she's actually good at it. So each time the opponent sends her a ball that is near the net, she thinks that she's going to get it. And she actually goes for it. So her statistics then became true. So I'm not sure, she was not confident, but then her coach gave her a data that is not true, but then she became confident later on.
Yeah. I think that's a very nice example of a self-fulfilling prophecy in psychology. And I also heard, I think there was a saying, I think also in kind of entrepreneurship and something like, right? So it says that fake it until you make it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's basically the idea here. And also, so I think indeed some of the times, I think you raise a very good point, a very nice point in the sense of sometimes people are rationally irrational. So there can be rational irrationality, which means that if by being irrational, you can achieve better outcome than being rational or fully kind of calm. So then that's the way to go. I think, I mean, so here what I'm talking about is mainly only about in the financial context. Actually, I myself do some research in some non-finance context. So for example, I study the role of overconfidence in, let's say, the context of the social dilemma. So for example, in a typical what we call public good game. Public good game is just like as we know, right? So if everybody contribute, then you are going to have a good outcome. But if you are the only one person in your group who contribute, you're definitely going to lose money. And then I find that actually the problem with the public good game is much lesser if you have a group of overconfident people. Because when everybody thinks that, well, I mean, I'm a charming person, I'm going to take the lead and other guys are going to follow me and so on and so forth. So many of the times, if, let's say, either you believe that you can make others more cooperative, you have the ability, or even if like you just believe that maybe you do not become more cooperative yourself, but you have the charm or ability to convince others to be more cooperative to you. So then actually the result will be better, especially in solving social dilemma. So if everybody is overconfident about how much they can influence others and try to make others cooperative, actually the society is going to become more cooperative. Yeah. So
you have a question from Ken.
Yeah, I think it's just a comment. It's a nice comment. If make money, overconfidence is good. If lose money, overconfidence is bad. Well, I think maybe we need to take a little bit of caution there. So here I think it should be in terms of risk-adjusted return, right? Risk-adjusted return. So by being overconfident, you almost inevitably take more risk. And in this case, on average, by taking more risk, your expected return can be higher. But the thing is that you also need to take risk adjusted. So for example, if you are making good innovation, so then even after the, let's say, risk premium, you're still making money. So then overconfidence is good. But otherwise, so let's say if you're just gambling, right? If you're just gambling, some of the times you're lucky. You get money because you're lucky, and then in such a case, at least from economics point of view, we still don't say overconfidence is good, because let's say the money out of the randomness is not something reliable. Okay, any other questions or comments?
If not, we will wrap up this session. Thank you so much, Dr.